What's happening, guys and girls? Acrinator here, and welcome to another episode of World of Warcraft Dungeon Overview. This episode will be going through Gundrak. I'll be guiding you through it with my paladin you see here. So with that being said, let's dive straight into it. Like the other tribes of Azeroth, the Drakkari trolls originally hail from the Zandalari bloodline. When smaller sects began branching off to find their own lands to call home, the Drakkari took a liking to the frozen north. Their icy kingdom would eventually become known as Zul'Drak, and the tribe would later become predominantly known as Ice Trolls. Nestled near the northeastern edge of the land, Gundrak rose as the main city within their territory, from which the Frost King could oversee his people. For thousands of years, the only competition the Drakkari would face were the Furbolgs, though such threats were kept at bay sufficiently enough. The Ice Trolls were truly the masters of their domain for quite some time. Just like their cousins, the Drakkari worshipped various wild gods known as the Loa. Priesthoods would form around them, and these powerful spirits of nature would bestow the title of prophet upon their chosen messenger. Though the tribe communed with many Loa, there was never any fighting between these followings. That's not to say that there were never any fights amongst tribesmen, but that was usually more sportsmanlike than hateful. Around the time of the Third Great War, when the undead scourge began rising from their graves, the Drakkari found themselves challenged for their ancestral homeland for the very first time. Though they knew the lay of the land better than any walking corpse could, the Drakkari struggled to fight back the undead tide. With traitors such as the deceitful Drakkari leading the charge against their own, the Frost King's people have become ever more desperate. They've actually begun to turn on the Loa they once revered, stealing their power for their own. This has caused the remaining Loa to turn their backs on the Drakkari, forcing the priests and prophets to capture the wild gods and forcibly take what little power that remains for themselves. Throughout the questing experience in Zul'Drak, we've managed to save as many Loa as we could, earning their blessings in the process. With the Scourge pushed back to Icecrown for the moment, and the Drakkari retreating to their capital, now is the time to strike at the heart of Gundrak, and take out the last of the remaining prophets. Only then will the rest of the Loa be free from their captivity, and able to give us their blessings as well. Gundrak is a level 73 to 78 dungeon with a level 80 heroic mode located in the northeastern portion of Zul'Drak. While the entire zone surrounding the Frost King's palace is labeled as Gundrak, the area we're looking for is just in front of that to the left. You will likely have to fight a few trash mobs on the way in, though they aren't elite so they shouldn't give you too much trouble. This is assuming that you don't have flying, of course, in which case you could just fly directly over them and get to where you need to be without fighting at all. Slaadraan is a Drakkari prophet to one of the Serpentine Loa, to which he was severely loyal. It was through great deliberation that he and his brethren decided to sacrifice their masters and steal their power. With renewed vigor and hatred aimed at the Scourge, Slaadraan has vowed to end those who forced him to commit such heinous acts against the ones he revered so very much. Be sure to clear out the snakes in the room before starting the fight, since ad management is going to be a big part of this one. Once that's all cleared out, just look out for more snakes popping into the fight. Slaadraan will periodically summon them, so just AoE them down and you should be alright. The only other thing is that this boss can cast a Poison Nova on all nearby players, so casters should just keep their distance. After you've defeated Slaadraan, but before you move on to the rest of the dungeon, be sure to click on the little stone structure in front of where he was standing. It'll be called the Altar of Slaadraan, and once you click on it, it'll drop a large snake head onto the bridge at the center of the map. You have to activate all 3 altars to unlock the way to the final boss, and this is very easy to forget for those who don't know what they're doing. So if nothing else, remember this one bit for this dungeon. With the power of voodoo magic concentrated into Mojo, the Drakkari have successfully created constructs that would fight for them. The first and greatest of these semi-living structures is known as the Colossus, which protects Gundrak's underbelly from any and all intruders. You'll notice that the boss isn't immediately attackable when you first enter the room. To start the fight, just take out the other constructs in the room as well as the Mojo water elementals and you'll be good to go. The only real mechanic for this fight is that the boss will switch back and forth from the construct you see at first to a giant Mojo elemental, so just tank and make it down accordingly. Of course, this boss has an altar to click on as well. Just click on the altar of the Drakkari Colossus and you're almost done with this stupid bridge puzzle. During our adventures leading up to the Siege of Gundrak, we tried and failed to rescue the Loa Mam Toth from the Drakkari priests. Though we couldn't save him in time, the trolls were unable to absorb his power as they had hoped. Instead, the wild god destroyed his own body, leaving only a crater in his wake. Unlike his peer Slaadraan, however, the High Prophet of Mam Toth, Morabi, didn't think twice about sacrificing his master to gain more power. Without the Great Mammoth Spirit to siphon energy from directly, Morabi was forced to use the next best thing. Mam Toth's blood was collected collected from around the site of his destruction, and the prophet gathered as much of the Loas essence as possible. Though not as strong as he would be if the first ritual had succeeded, Morabi has power enough to fight against those who would oppose the Drakkari. First things first, there are a couple of trash mobs in the room around Morabi, so be sure to clear them out before starting the boss fight. This boss is relatively far away from them up on a ledge, so if you manage to pull him, you probably deserve to wipe. The only major attack to look out for with this boss is called either Determined Stab or Determined Gore, depending on which phase of the fight you're in. This is really only relevant for the tank because this does a lot of damage and can't be dodged whatsoever. So just be sure to pop a survivability cooldown when you're affected by this, especially considering this ability can stack over time. Just in case you were worried that I'd leave out the rest of the group, you can lay your fears to rest because you all have a job that's even more important than merely killing the boss. Morabi will attempt to cast Transformation, where if he succeeds, he'll transform into the avatar of Mamtoth. This increases his damage done significantly and is a real pain in the ass to deal with if he's allowed to finish casting. So for the love of not wiping, make sure someone interrupts the cast and you should be alright. After you've defeated the boss, don't forget to click on the altar right in front of where he was standing, and yes, I had to mention that for every single boss that has an altar. I've gone through too many groups where people forget to do this, so I'm not letting you make the same mistake. The Drakkari did not immediately turn against their Loa masters. In fact, they had tried just about everything under the sun before even dreaming of such drastic measures. This even included trying to train and weaponize the northern cousins of the Murlocs, the Gorloks. Obviously enough, their experiments failed, and the Drakkari had to resort to attempting to steal from the wild gods, leaving their failed experiments to rot in their cages underneath Gundrak. Led by the enigmatic Ek, this Gorlok and his minions have been waiting for their chance to escape. As you can imagine, the ruckus we're causing is just the distraction they were looking for. As for why we're fighting them, I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, hey, they're related to Murlocs, so they can't be that innocent. You'll find the entrance to X area just inside the same room that you fought Morabi. Just duck down into the little walkway and you'll find the boss at the very end of the path. Once you make it to the room with the boss marker, just clear the 3 trash mobs and Ek will jump out from his underwater cave to start the fight immediately. There's 2 main things to worry about for this fight, the first being that the boss has a poison spit ability for the cone directly in front of him, so the tank should face him away from the rest of the group. Hopefully that's become standard routine for you by this point. The next bit is that Ek will enter Berserk mode after 90 seconds, so you should probably just pop all of your cooldowns from the start to down him as fast as possible. He can be very difficult considering this increases his damage by 500% and his attack speed by 150%, so be prepared to burst the ever-loving shit out of him. At the very end of Zul'Drak's questing experience, we invade the courtyard of Gundrak in order to make our way to the spirit of the Rhino Loa Akali. With the help of the Loa that we did manage to free in time, we're able to save Akali's spirit from captivity. Though his body was already sundered for the power it held, the Loa cannot be killed permanently besides in the Emerald Dream, meaning that Akali is still very much alive in spirit, and angry for revenge. The Great Rhino tasks us with entering the caverns underneath the Frost King's palace to put an end to the prophets who've betrayed the Loa spirits. At the helm of the Order of Priests and Prophets is Gundrak, the Drakkari High Prophet to Akali himself. He led his people against their masters, and it's up to us to incur the spirits' wrath in their physical absence. This won't be an easy fight, given that Gundrak has successfully managed to absorb Akali's powers, but death is all that he deserves for everything he's done. Once you've killed all the other bosses, assuming you remember to click on the altars like I told you, you'll see the bridge move opening the way to Gundrak. Just make your way back to the area where you killed the Colossus and go down the stairs just past the altar. Trust me, it's a lot easier than trying to swim through the water where all the aggro fish are. On your way to the boss, you'll find a few packs of trash mobs that have to run to defend the bridge. For the most part, they're easy enough, though I would recommend focusing down the rhinos since they're by far the biggest threat. Once they're taken care of, there will be nothing left to stand in your path to Gundrak. For the first phase of the fight, the boss will perform an ability that's similar to Bladestorm, so just take a step back while he's spinning around. No need to take extra damage to pad your DPS meters ever so slightly. At about 50% health, Gundrak will transform into the avatar of Akali, where he does a bit more damage than before. Other than that, there's nothing really that you can avoid, so just tank and spank him at this point. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, maybe even subscribe. Links to my social media and whatnot are in the description below, and as for the comment question, is it just me, or does it feel like we fought our enemies in the wrong order for Zul'Drak? First we pushed the Scourge out of the area, and then we picked a fight with the Drakkari. I know they were incarcerating the Loa, but it feels like the Drakkari saw the the Lich King as a bigger threat compared to our forces. I don't know, it just feels like we could have convinced them to work together with us in order to besiege Icecrown that much sooner. I didn't mention this in the dungeon lore mostly because it didn't really fit anywhere, but the Drakkari have been known to invite strong warriors of other races to dine with them. Their guests would be granted safety until the end of the meal, at which time anything could happen. The guests might be allowed to leave peacefully, or the Drakkari could have attacked them, but nothing was really guaranteed. It seems to me that if they were that open to other people as long as they saw them as respectable enough, then some sort of deal could be struck to work together. But what do you think? Does that sound feasible, or do you think the Drakkari wouldn't have gone that far? Anyways, that's all the time I've got for today, so until next time, don't die.